Hello, and welcome to Embracing the Fight. I am Erica Lamar, your digital creator and host. And if you've been watching Embracing the Fight since January of 2022, you will know that it is about normalizing the conversations surrounding physical and mental health issues and concerns. And you also know that I started the discussion off with my journey through thyroid cancer. And I am looking for great news next month in April when they do the lab work to determine whether or not the cancer has become undetectable, because I claim to be cancer free in 2024. So if you haven't taken a chance yet to click subscribe, click like, click share, and comment on the different videos for Embracing the Fight, please take a moment to do that, because I want this message to be shared across the world. We can heal one person at a time with these messages. And if you'd like to be on Embracing the Fight, just send me an email to operations@diversitydesigned.com, or you can find me on any social media platform at Embracing the Fight. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's talk about episode 62. I remember when. Do you have moments, where you're walking through your house and you went to go get something and you like, what did I go to get? Or you get mid-sentence and you forget, your train of thought, or you find yourself, searching for words. Is that dementia? Is it Alzheimer's? Or you're just losing focus? What is it? How do you know the difference? How do you know when it could be the early onset of Alzheimer's? So most people associate Alzheimer's with the elderly, but we're finding now that there's an earlier onset of Alzheimer's in people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So in this episode, I'm going to unpack those things, but please note, I am not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, not a neurologist, not a psychiatrist, and I do not specialize in geriatrics. I don't do any of that stuff. I do like to research and look at things that are of concern. And this was one of the topics that I was asked to speak on today. So I tried to find as much as I could, and hopefully the information that I provide to you today is very helpful. So let's jump right into Embracing the Fight, episode 62. I remember when. So these are the various topics that I'll be talking about today. What is dementia? The various types of dementia, the early onset of dementia, and treatment for dementia. You hear people all the time, just referring to dementia strictly as Alzheimer's disease, but there are so many other types of dementia. But in general, dementia is a condition that's characterized by the progressive or persistent loss of intellectual functioning, is especially with impairment of memory and abstract thinking. Often it comes with personality change, and it results from an organic disease of the brain. So when you think about like organic disease of the brain, a lot of people, get a loss. They're like, well, what is an organic disease? It has to do with the proteins that are in your brain. It also has to do with blood flow. All of these things are organic and they occur, within the brain naturally. So it's not some outside interference that's causing, some of these forms of dementia. Now, there actually is one that does have like an outside interference, like if you have a brain injury or something like that, like if you get hit in the head, there is a type of dementia that can result from that. All right. So some symptoms, a lot of people, think that dementia is just memory loss. If it were just memory loss, everybody has dementia then, because nobody remembers absolutely everything. But it also comes paired with other things. And as you can see on the screen, there's increasing confusion. That means like if you can't remember something, but say for instance, somewhere familiar, like how to drive home from work. Say you start driving home from work and you get confused as to where you are, and you can't remember anyone's name to call to help you, get to where you're trying to get to. Those two things paired together can be a sign of dementia. Also, there's personality and behavior changes. For instance, if you notice that someone that you love, that you care for, has the two things that I mentioned earlier, as far as the memory loss and increasing confusion, and they also start acting out, they start, yelling and cursing and doing things outside, of their normal behavior, then those things can also be indications of the onset of dementia. Also, if you notice that the person that you love is starting to withdraw, they're starting to be more depressed, apathetic, they're always by themselves, they're always looking at the sad side of things when they were a normally content and happy person, or they like to be around people. If you notice like just a very quick change, not something that like gradually happens over time, but in some cases, I guess it does happen over time. But if you notice something that is not normal with that person and they're having all the other things that I mentioned as well, that is also a sign of dementia. Then you have the inability to perform tasks. Let's pick something simple. But they have a hard time, brushing their teeth. They can't have the motor function where the brain is telling the hand to pick up the toothbrush, put the toothpaste on, take it to the mouth. Say you see them over there and they're like, trying to put the toothpaste on and knocking the toothpaste out of hand and getting frustrated. And they're like, man, I just can't do this. Or you see them trying to put on clothes. They have a very hard time, putting on clothes. I'm not saying someone, that is physically impaired already. I'm saying someone who is normally healthy and you notice that tasks they could normally perform, now they have an issue with performing those things. Also, it comes with reduced concentration. Now, I kind of smile with that because, sometimes reduced concentration can be because something is boring. But if this is something that that the person normally enjoys, like if they like to read, or if they like to watch like movies or westerns, things of that nature, and you see that they're looking at it and they're like, losing concentration and looking around, and they're not wanting to sit there and read, they don't finish, anything, they're just half doing things because they cannot focus. And then lastly, it says loss of ability to do everyday tasks. Some people, can no longer clean up. They can no longer drive. They can't do the things that are required for their life to be normal. All those symptoms together, and some of them just paired with a couple here and there, will show up as dementia. So there are 8 different types of dementia that I want to kind of touch on today. And the first one, everyone, knows about Alzheimer's, and you hear people refer to it sometimes as old timers, but they only say that because it affects about 60 to 80% of people over 65. You don't really notice people, that are younger that have Alzheimer's. And the main symptom that you see is memory loss. It's like someone could walk up to you and say, hey, are we going to the grocery store today? And you say yes. Then 2 minutes later, they come back, hey, are we going to the grocery store today? And you're like, yeah, I just said we're going to the grocery store. 5 minutes later, are we going to the grocery store? And you at first you're like, am I being pumped? Are they rushing me to try to go to the grocery store? No, that's not actually the case. What it is they are dealing with Alzheimer's. And what happens is they have these plaques that form on the brain and these different tangles that are not allowing the proper blood flow and the neuron receptors to do what they need to do in order to communicate within the brain. So you just start forgetting stuff and you forget more and more and more. That is basically what, Alzheimer's is in a nutshell. Then you have the Lewy body dementia. And the main symptom for that is people will hallucinate and be, delusional. They also have some, issues with motor control, and it seems like they mimic someone who has Parkinson's, with the violent shakes that are uncontrolled, but it's coupled with the hallucination and delusion. And this was something that Robin Williams, the comedian that committed suicide, this was something that he was diagnosed with. And I'm just, guessing. I don't know, him. I don't know his mind. I don't know his thoughts, but understanding how this disease can progress I think that maybe the suicide could have been because he didn't want to get to that side of the progression, because it's a very horrible, debilitating disease. But what happens is a certain type of protein called alpha synuclein protein forms clumps that like accumulate in nerve cells near where the memory, thinking, and motor control responses lie in the brain. So it's like almost like forming a gate or a fortress around the areas in your brain that control your memory, your thinking, and your motor control. And there's nothing you could do to unlock it. It just continues to deteriorate. So your brain is like shrinking. Well, in all cases of dementia, your brain is shrinking in some capacity. So then there's the vascular dementia. And you notice this because people start, with the difficulty with language, like they can't speak properly and it becomes frustrating. So they start having these emotional outbursts. And this is between people, this is like people over 65, but it's only about 15 to 20% of people that are diagnosed with dementia. And basically what happens is the blood flow is blocked off, either from like a stroke, from TIAs, brain hemorrhages, things of that nature, anything where, say, you had some form of high blood pressure or narrowing of the veins or the ventricles in the brain, anything dealing with your vascular system in the brain that is narrowing, um, it impacts or is referred to as vascular dementia. So then you have the frontal temporal dementia. This is usually noticed when a person's mood or behavior, changes. They become aggressive. They lack empathy. It's like you have this wonderful, gentle person that all of a sudden turns into, someone that's totally unrecognizable, someone that is angry, they're aggressive. And memory loss is not, the main symptom. It's more they're angry. It's a behavior thing, because where the proteins accumulate are the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. That is the area, where your mood and your behavior is controlled. Then there's the normal pressure hydrocephalus type of dementia. And this is usually noticed like when a person has urinary incontinence, or they have problems with balancing, they have issues with short-term memory loss. Like, for instance, if you get that sensation or that stimulus in your brain that says, I have to go to the bathroom, and then you just start going. That's what this urinary incontinence is. You have no control over your ability to urinate or to not urinate. It just happens when it happens. And then you notice that you're falling down, and you notice that things that, are within your short-term memory, like, say, for instance, if somebody told you, hey, you got an appointment on next Tuesday, and you forget all about the appointment, you forget all about the person telling you all about it, and it's just gone. That's what normal pressure hydrocephalus does to you, and affects about 700,000 Americans. But what happens is there is an excessive accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid that accumulates in the brain's ventricles, or the spaces of the cavities in your brain, and it can actually be successfully treated if caught early. Then there's Huntington's disease, and you notice this by the physical impairments that a person has, like the ability to, say, just be able to raise their arms, or to reach out, grab something and pick it up, to hold on to something, to close a door, to pick up a mug, to clap, anything that is physical that you cannot do, that you get frustrated. You're like, why can't I do this anymore? And then you have difficulty planning. Like before, you could set up your day and say, okay, I'm going to eat breakfast. I'm going to get my clothes ready. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to put my clothes on. I'm going to go to work. And you find yourself just sitting there, and you can't like organize the thoughts in your head. You can't plan. It's just like everything goes out of your brain and you don't know why or what's happening. This affects about 40,000 Americans, and it develops between the ages of 30 and 50. And this is usually inherited, like it is, I should say, usually, it is an inherited mutation of the Huntington gene, and it affects the movement, your behavior, and your mood. And this is not something that can be reversed. It can only be treated like with medication to ease the symptoms. Now, this next one is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, and it is noticed when a person is more depressed, they're agitated, they have mood swings, memory loss. It affects, about 350 Americans, and it can be inherited genetically, or it can be acquired by eating meat that has like mad cow disease. So basically beef. And usually this is a very fast moving form of dementia. And usually they don't know that they have this until they're hospitalized. And by the time they're hospitalized, 9 times out of 10, this is a fatal form of dementia because it's so fast moving. And then there's the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. So this is mainly noted by vision problems, memory loss, involuntary movement, and this is caused by a deficiency of vitamin B1. So if there's been issues with anorexia or issues with long-term alcoholism, and this seems like the type of dementia that Wendy Williams is suffering with at this point. But like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm just guessing. I'm just making an assumption based off of what I've seen in the media and some of the different stories that I've heard concerning, her condition. And my prayer is that anyone who has any of these forms of dementia, that you are healed and there is some form of turnaround or some form of comfort that can be given to you during this process. So then when you think about early onset dementia, I was actually, very surprised, very shocked, because just looking at the numbers between 2013 and 2017, because that was the earliest, or should I say the most recent information that I could find concerning early onset dementia, because there's so many people that are in their 30s that are diagnosed with some form of dementia. And this is so odd because in 2013, it was about 4.2% or 4.2 per 10,000 adults between the age of 30 and 64 that were diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But then in 27, it went up to 12.6. This is a 200% increase. And the average age of people living with dementia is now 49. And here I am sitting here, 46 years old, saying, wow, in a few years, I'll start to see, more people in my age group that are dealing with dementia. And the sad part of it also is that it uh, disproportionately affects women more so than it does men. Not saying I want men to have dementia or anything, because, I'm just trying to be funny here. Men tend to forget anything anyway, and they just listen to us and believe us. So we got dementia, and they listen to us and believe us. We got a problem, right? All right. So then while the total number of people, is relatively small when they're diagnosed, because this number that we're actually looking at is for adults that actually have say commercialized insurance of some form. So there's probably lots of people out there that do not, have insurance, or they just haven't been diagnosed because they ain't go to the doctor. They might have insurance, they just don't go because they don't think anything's wrong, because they're like, hey, I just forget a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it's not, something extremely major. It's something that, it just happens. When that's not the case, when you should try to go and see a physician when you start noticing the things that I discussed in the previous slides. So when you look at the younger age groups, look at the age between 30 and 44, it's up 373% between 2013 and 2017. And then in my age group, between age 45 and 54, we're up 311%. And then between the ages of 55 and 64, they're up 143%. And a lot of people are saying, what really changed between 2013 and 2017? That I cannot answer, but there are a lot of things that um, were trending when it came to the way that we ate, the things that we did as far as exercising. There's a whole lot more technology that causes us to be a lot more sedentary than we were when we were younger, because I see little kids now all the time just sitting in the front yard playing on um iPads, tablets, phones, things of that nature. And then you rarely see a child go by you, skating or on a bicycle or playing in the neighborhood. You just don't see that sort of thing anymore. And the more technology progresses, it looks like the more these numbers go up. But I am not actuary scientist. I'm not, I don't do statistics or anything like that related to health. But this is just an observation, of life. So you can have your opinion on it, or you can respect mine as well. So how do you actually treat Alzheimer's or dementia or the vascular dementia, the Lewy body dementia? How do you actually treat it? So you can't diagnose yourself. Sure, you can go through that list and say, I have all these things, or I think I have all these things. I think I have, dementia. What you should do is go see a neurologist, because a neurologist specializes in the diseases of the brain and nervous system. They're the ones that can do the CT scans, the MRIs. They can do the visual field tests, because when I was having the neurological issues of having, they said that I had a TIA, and I also have factor five Leiden. And whenever I would go to the neurologist, she would ask me to hold my hands out, to push stuff, to bend my knees. She would hit my knee with that I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but when they hit you on the knee and your knee is supposed to have some type of reflex. Well, they do that, and then after they do all that, they take the pieces of your your symptoms, or however your body performs based on the tests that they've given you. Then they determine whether or not you have a neurological disorder. And that's basically how they attack dementia. So you would need to see a neurologist. Then you have your psychiatrist, who specializes, in general psychiatry with additional training in mental health and aging. So they know what to look for too when it comes to symptoms and issues of dementia. Then there's a psychologist, one who trains in testing or specializes in the training and testing to assess thinking abilities like, memory, attention, language, focus, things of that nature. And then there's the geriatrician, who specializes in the care of adults and dementia, older adults, really, because you hear about geriatrics. And they're able to look at the cognitive decline in the elderly. So then, like I was saying earlier, they do brain scans, MRI, CT scans, things like that, cognitive tests, motor skill assessments. And they take all that information, not just one little piece here, one little piece there. And then they look at, the complaints that you have. And then they're able to tell you what it is that you have. If you have dementia, what type of dementia it is, and all that. There are also some blood tests they do to determine, the proteins. So they'll draw blood and they'll see what proteins are showing up in your blood and whether or not they're part of the reason why you are experiencing dementia. So while there are medications on the market that will help with dementia, there's only really one that you can actually cure. And we talked about that a few moments ago, but the remainder of them, the medicine is designed to temporarily ease the symptoms of dementia and to stop the progression of the disease. Now, it doesn't give you back your cognitive ability. It just kind of helps it stop where the decline has started. And then sometimes the medication is not, effective, kind of like the one where if you get the mad cow disease by eating the beef, then 9 times out of 10, there's nothing, that can be done. It's usually fatal. So if you want more information, concerning Alzheimer's, you'll get the screen. There's the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. There's a national toll-free number that's listed there. It's 1-866-232-8484. And if you have friends or family that are dealing with dementia and you want to help, with the cause to help find a cure, then you can also donate to this foundation. Now, I don't have any ties to this organization, but they had really good information when I was doing my research to bring this information to you to talk about dementia. So I thank you so much for taking your time out today to sit down and view this episode 62. I remember when, as I discussed dementia. Have an absolutely amazing day.